Hello, my name is Ryan Mayeda, and I'm on the product team for Unreal Engine, where my focus is on virtual production. So as you might guess, that's what we're here to talk about today. Specifically, we're going to cover real-time facial capture with iPhones using our new app, LiveLink Face. To do that, I'm going to enlist the help of a familiar face, someone you might recognize from the UE5 reveal. She's going to act as my avatar, and we're going to do the presentation together. We'll primarily be taking a tour of the iOS app, leaving other deeper topics like the animation and rigging setup, as well as timecode and hardcore stage configuration for a future talk. We'll touch on them a bit, but these are definitely areas we'll want to cover later as folks get further into the facial capture pipeline. All right, let's get started. I'll go ahead and launch LiveLink Face, and you can see that she comes alive right away with my face driving hers through the app. Check it out. Nailed it. This may go without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. One thing to call out is that the app uses the iPhone's front-facing camera, so my video is mirrored, which in turn means that our head movements will look reversed on screen since she's actually looking at us. If I turn my head to the right, she's also turning her head to her right, and I think you get the idea. Next, I'll put my marketing hat on and make sure to be clear. The app is out now, and hopefully everyone's already downloaded it. If you haven't, grab it from the Apple App Store ASAP. It's free. The only real requirement is that your iPhone has a true depth camera, which is needed for the ARKit face tracking. The basic rule of thumb is that if your iPhone doesn't have a home button, you should be all good. Our big goal for the app was to take the Face AR sample that tons of people have already had good success with, including us at Epic, and productize the iOS portion so teams don't have to build and deploy the app themselves. This isn't necessarily that straightforward to do, and we found that a lot of our clients don't have that expertise in-house. Wherever possible, we want to empower people to focus on creating the characters, performances, and content in general, and that's what's led us down this path. The Face AR sample is still very much with us, though, and our old friend, the Kite Boy, is still a great example asset to start with, even though he's sitting this presentation out. Let's get into the app, but first a bit of housekeeping. In order to use the features we're showing today, there are a few plugins to enable. First up is LiveLink. This might be obvious, LiveLink is in the name of the app itself, but the facial capture stream is coming in over the LiveLink protocol, so you're of course going to need that plugin on. Next up is the LiveLink Curve Debug UI. So technically this isn't required for the system to work, but this plugin is super useful, especially if you're doing the animation and character setup. It really lets you diagnose the data coming in, figure out how it's being applied to your character, look at the blend shapes, that sort of thing. So it's super useful, and we highly recommend having it on. ARKit and ARKit face support, again, pretty self-explanatory since we are using the ARKit face tracking, but you're going to need those on for sure. Take Recorder is what we're going to do to record the LiveLink stream in Unreal Engine and kind of get it into sequencer or work with it as animation. And last but not least is the Time Data Monitor. So this is a new plugin you may not be familiar with. It's in 425. It's super cool, and it's kind of something like I was alluding to earlier, where this timecode workflow is its own demo. But in this case, we're going to use this new plugin just to visualize the timecode coming in from the iPhone into Unreal Engine. All right. Let's jump into the main screen. So we have kind of a social style UX, very much inspired by other apps that use face tracking. We felt like this would make it both familiar and fun to people as they were starting out, even though we don't have any filters. So, you can do them in Unreal. In terms of the main layout, the main thing to notice first is the big green live at the top. So green means you're on air. We're streaming data, right? So my performance is being sent over to her in the engine. If we tap this, we can pause the stream. So now, no matter what I do, it's not going to carry over into Unreal Engine. This can be a handy thing to do if you need to go offline for whatever reason, take a break, whatever. It's just a tap away. Let's go back live for presentation purposes. Next up in the top right, it's kind of some related features, but a little bit more oriented around battery life. So right now we have both video on, right? You can see me. We have the face tracking on. It's being sent over to her. If I tap this once, we're going to toggle the video off, but leave the tracking on, right? So the video tends to use up a little bit more battery. It's something you may want to turn off during a shoot, even though you keep the capture going. In addition, we've found that some actors maybe don't like to see their face when they're performing, right? It can be distracting. So if that's the case, you can toggle the video off, and then they can just focus easier on their lines, etc. The last option here is both video off and face tracking off, right? So this is super battery saver mode. Might be something you want to toggle in between takes, in between setups, or if you're taking a break, but keeping the actors in costume or keeping them all rigged up. That's an option there to help prolong the life of the phone for the shoot. Let's turn everything back on for our presentation. Next thing we'll mention is timecode. So no matter what, you're always going to see a readout of the current timecode right there underneath the live button. We're going to get into this in more depth shortly as we dive into the settings, but at minimum, you can always see you're getting timecode, what it is, and a little icon of where it's coming from. Down in the bottom right is face detection. So this is green when the app is detecting a face. Obviously, it's detecting mine right now. But if it loses the face for whatever reason, then that's going to go gray. We can demonstrate this by being safe, kind of masking up here. So if I put my mask on, the app no longer recognizes my face or a face, and now we're offline. So even though we are technically still streaming, the app isn't finding a face to actually stream. So if I take this off, we'll be back again. Picks up very quickly, but just note, maybe not super quarantine friendly. Another thing to mention is down at the bottom, our slate and take, bottom middle. So we're going to come back to this later when we do some recording. But I just wanted to call out quickly, you can tap this and modify the slate and take by hand directly in the app. Obviously, like in general, it's the best practice to keep this aligned and matched up to what you have in Take Recorder, but there is the option here to set it yourself in the app directly. Also down here is the live link subject name, and that's kind of a good segue into the full settings menu, which is up at the top left. So let's jump into there next. So we have a lot of settings. We're trying to keep this as user-friendly as possible, but we also want to make sure we're offering a robust set of features that help people range from like entry-level folks who may not touch these very much to professional stages that are going to really get into the nitty-gritty. First thing we'll hit is live link and the subject name, which you just saw displayed at the bottom of the main screen. So by default, the subject name is the name of the device or the name of the phone. You can see my phone is Panda with 8 A's. You can override it if you want. And then now let's quickly kind of jump out and just show what this looks like in the engine. So I'll go out of full screen, pop over to the live link panel, right? So we have a source, which is the ARKit face tracking. Down here is our subject name, which is Panda, matching exactly what we have up here in the app for the subject name. And that's how you make that link. Pop back into full screen. Next up is network targets. So our main workflow idea for the app is to multicast the data stream of the faces to all machines in a potential multi-user session. And the goal here is to minimize latency. We've really designed the app to excel in sort of collaborative virtual production with multiple machines. Maybe you have one that's recording, one that's doing VCam, one that's focused on stage operation, maybe you're scouting, right? So each of those machines is getting the facial tracking data as fast as possible, and then we synchronize with timecode. The network targets are based on an IP port combination. So in this case, I'm a single user, single machine setup, just with my home box here. You can find your IP really easily. Just pop open a command prompt, hit IP config, right? So I'm transmitting over Wi-Fi. I'm going to look at my wireless adapter, and my IP address here is 192.168.1.17 on the home network, and that's what I've entered in as the target. The default port is 11111. You probably only need to change it if your IT team tells you to. And if you want to enter into a multi-user session, you have multiple machines, you're just going to add a target, punch in another IP address here. Cancel out of that, close the thing here. Right, so next up is the live link protocol. In Unreal 425, we made some improvements here and added support for fractional frames, which improves accuracy and helps avoid the possibility of duplicate frames. But this is also something that you need to be aware of for backwards compatibility purposes. You can use the app with older versions of Unreal, right? So right now I'm using 425, but if I wanted to use an earlier project, like maybe a 424 project, then I can go in here and change the protocol. The main thing to point out here is that it's very specific, so you need an exact match between the versions for the protocol, otherwise the stream won't work. So because I'm in a 425 project, if I change it to 424 here, and I let that setting take hold, right, I'm losing stream. Everything looks like it's set up correctly, but I'm not getting any facial tracking data. So that's something to keep an eye out on if you are using different versions of Unreal. This is something that you're going to need to make sure has an exact match. So let's switch ourselves back to 425. Get the stream back. Here we go. And then close out our live link settings talk with the last item, which is live at startup. This one's pretty straightforward. You notice that when we launched the app, we started streaming right away, and that's based on this toggle. If you don't want that to happen, you want it to be like a two-step process where you open the app and then opt into streaming, then just toggle that guy off. Next settings to go through is timecode. So, this is a big feature from the pro standpoint, and we have 3 different options for timecode. They kind of build in complexity and sophistication. So first up is the system timer, right? So this comes from the clock of the phone itself. So it may look like a non-standard, like weird timecode. In this case, there's like a 94 in it. That's not something that you usually see on a stage. And this is because the system timer is based on how long the phone has been on. So I haven't rebooted my phone for a long time, and that's why it says 94 hours. The other 2 options are a little bit more of the kind of classic, like expected timecode formats, and those are NTP and tentacle sync. So we'll go through NTP first, right? So NTP lets you synchronize timecode with a time server. The default we provide is the Apple one, the standard one, the same thing that your phone uses to figure out what time it is based on what Apple thinks it is. We've seen some productions rely on they're using their own NTP server on stage, and they use this to synchronize all the devices. So this can be a really easy way to get like time of day time code. So note that right now in LA it's about 8:20, and that's what you see here. Last up is tentacle sync. So this is definitely the most like pro option, and this enables the app to synchronize with a master clock hardware device on stage. And the way we do that is with this device called a tentacle sync that we've done integration with. So this is what a tentacle sync looks like. It's just a little lightweight Bluetooth guy. And it connects to a master clock. So I've got one here using the ultrasync. You can kind of see this thing here, right? So I know it's mirrored, but the time code on this guy should match what you see there, right? 421.27. And the way it works is that the master clock drives the tentacle sync. And then the tentacle sync through Bluetooth tells the iPhone what the time code should be. So the tentacle device is really cool. We actually use this on our own shoots. And so one thing to note is that if you have a shoot with multiple performers, multiple iPhones, you should be able to use the same tentacle sync to drive the time code on all of them. You don't need a one-to-one relationship between tentacle sync and phone. So that's pretty cool. Last thing I want to show here on time code is popping back out into the editor. And I mentioned it before, but the time data monitor here. So this is the new plugin we're talking about, and this is kind of just to show that the time code is indeed coming through, and this is what we're getting. So nothing up our sleeve. Time code's coming through. What you see on the phone is what you get in Unreal Engine. All right. So I'm going to actually switch this back to NTP. I always feel a little bit weird when it's not time of day time code. It just looks odd to me. All right, back to the settings. So OSC is up next. We're actually going to park that and come back to it. OSC is for remote control, set of features that let you administer the app externally, but that's going to be our grand finale. So we'll look out for that at the end. Next up is stream head rotation, right? So this is something that you're going to want to turn off when you're in a mocap suit, right? So if I turn this off here, right, so now she's very still, like none of the head rotation I had before is coming through, right? So when you're in a mocap suit or you have a body mocap solution available to you, like you're going to want to get the head rotation from the actual body mocap. If you have them both on, then like the data you get from ARKit is going to fight with the data from the body mocap solution, and you're probably going to get bad results. So if you're combining the app, maybe with like a head rig or something like that, you're definitely going to want to turn this guy off. But since I'm at my desk, I'm kind of more streamer style, I'm going to leave that on. It kind of gives it a little bit more life in this scenario. You can also see how much I like bob my head when I talk, which is kind of embarrassing, but I'm going to leave that in. Next up are some display options. So first up here is the preview mesh, right? So if you turn this on, you're going to get kind of a little bit more direct feedback on what ARKit is seeing, right? So it sees my face, you can see the exact placement of it, and it's more like an obvious sign that we have data coming through. It also looks a little bit creepy, so I didn't want to do the whole presentation this way. The record button lets you toggle the record button on and off. This is something that we'll come back to later when we hit recording, but the idea here is that if you were administering the app externally, then you don't want it so that the actors or whoever accidentally bump the record button. So you can just take it off entirely. Leave it on for now. The blend shape data is more for debug, right? So if I turn this on, I'm going to see a bunch of data here. And actually a good way to show this is like, I don't know, hopefully it's going to come through, but down in the bottom right is the head yaw, head pitch, and head roll. So if I move my head around, like you can see those numbers moving. But if I go back and I turn head rotation off, right, so now you can see those are all zeroed out. So no matter what I do, they're zeroed out. That means the app is not sending that data over to Unreal Engine. So turn this guy back on, turn blend shape off. So take recorder, this is the kind of format that's displayed. Like there's two options here, slate and take and file name, right? So the standard here is slate and take. It's the kind of more editorial style. In this case, we're 49D take one. But you can also change it to the file name. So this is more of like the pipeline-centric view. Some people really don't want spaces, so there's an underscore for you. But this reflects the name of the file that's going to be later extracted from the phone. But I prefer the editorial style, so I'm going to leave it as that. And then the overlay is, we've had it on the entire time, so it's all the stuff around here, the live, the different toggles, but you can also set it to fade out, so if you don't want to see that. So if you wait a couple seconds, then that overlay is going to go away. And kind of a better example of this is when you have video off, right? So this is maybe the most likely scenario that the performer is going to see. We have the video off, we have the overlay off, but we still let them see what time it is and also the battery. Oftentimes the performer is the one that will catch that the battery is almost dead, kind of like my phone now. But I'm going to leave it on because it's kind of easier or better for the demo. And the last thing to mention is the reference video. So we do record reference video every time you record. And there's an option to adjust the quality and file size. We are going to show that stuff right now because actually we're going to record a take. So with that, let's record a take. Let's turn the video back on. All right. So we're going to record a take in Take Recorder and from the iPhone manually. So the first thing we're going to do here is switch over to Take Recorder, right? So we've already set our slate and take to be the same thing. We always want those consistent between the two, and in this case, we're just going to record our live link source here. So now I'm going to hit record in Take Recorder. I'm going to hit record on the phone, and this will be our take. Okay, this is a demo recording that I've initiated manually in both Take Recorder and on the iPhone. And yeah. We'll cut. And now we'll take a look at it in Sequencer. So I didn't end up recording audio in Sequencer, but it is recorded in the reference video. Not really set up to record audio on my computer, but let's just play this back. You can see the action going here. Maybe I should have recorded a shorter take, but you know, my expressions at the end also came through. And now we will pop into the phone to take a look at it over there, right? So LiveLink Face has this take browser feature as well. So in the bottom left, we can pop into here. You know, so this is showing all the takes I've already recorded. Not surprisingly, they're all of me, right? You can browse them by all takes, by slate, or by day, right? So you can also do a search. So we know we were 49D. So if I type D, I can jump over to mine. And here's the take we just did. The video, as I just mentioned, has audio in it, but it also has timecode embedded. And the goal here is to take the reference video and be able to line it up to the recorded capture. So let's play it just as an example. Okay, this is a demo recording that I've initiated manually in both Take Recorder and on the iPhone. And yeah. All right, it's beautiful. Another thing to note here is that you can transfer the takes off of the phone using the iOS activity view. So if I hit the blue arrow up here, it's going to bring up a bunch of different options. So we'll zip up the data and potentially send it over. You know, AirDrop is generally the best and the fastest if you have a Mac, but we also have some other options, right? So you can do, you know, Google Drive, Box. You know, there's a bunch of different options that let you upload the data as well as just transfer it over AirDrop, but AirDrop is generally the fastest. Next up, we're going to take a look at an example take on disk. So we'll kind of cheat by just looking at a take that I've already moved over, right? So for each take, you're going to end up with a series of files. Like there's two main ones really. So first is a video, and then the second is the CSV. First thing we'll show is that video, right? So I actually have it open already. So this is an example of the reference video you get. I'll play it through now.
Here's an example recording to show that it has both timecode and audio.
I'm going to disable the, let's mute me. I don't think we need to hear that again. But it's also meant to show here that we are getting timecode in the media that comes through. You know, the QuickTime itself uses a JPEG codec, so there's no temporal compression. It's frame accurate, and again, goal here is to take the reference video, let you line it up to the recorded capture for reference. This is something that your animators may want to use, or just something to check that things are working the way you expected. The other thing that you get out of the take data is a CSV. So the CSV here shows all of the blend shape data that's recorded. It's kind of like a raw recording or a backup for what you might get in Take Recorder. So let's make this a little bit bigger. Right, so you basically get, for each timecode and fractional frame, which you can see here, you're getting basically all of the raw blend shape data. This is all the same data that you saw in the overlay earlier. And so the idea here is that, you know, this is just a reference to backup. We don't necessarily have a native importer just yet, but it is possible to take this data and like write a Python script with our with Unreal's Python API to import it. And this will let you basically create a live link track as if it was recorded by Take Recorder. In the future, we'd like to have just a native importer, but for now, we're just preparing the iOS app for more functionality later. We've also seen some people start to automate some of the pipeline tasks, like with the CSV, so your mileage may vary, and it'll be interesting to see what people build. So now we've reached the grand finale. I'll close out the CSV, pop back into the editor, and go full screen. And we're going to close with a demo of how LiveLink Face can be remote controlled by an external application using OSC. So to do that, we'll revisit our OSC settings. It's already enabled. And OSC stands for Open Sound Control. It's a common command interface popular in virtual production and honestly pretty widely used across a whole bunch of different industries. It uses the same IP address and port style setup as LiveLink for network communication. And the listener section here has to do with how the iPhone app is listening for commands from the OSC server and then acting on them. We conveniently display the iPhone's IP address here because you're probably going to have to enter it into the control application. And this is a two-way setup. We can also go the opposite direction and send messages out. To do that, you're going to need to set up an IP and port for the target. And this could be useful for like maybe more of a one-man band type scenario where the performer wants to initiate something, like maybe the performer wants to hit record on the phone, and then that triggers recording on a whole bunch of other devices outside. Both directions are supported, but in our case, we're going to demo it with a separate remote control app, talking to the iPhone, telling it to record, and using the right naming conventions. So the last thing we'll toggle is the record button. So we're going to turn the record button off just to show how we record a take from a remote app on the phone without interacting with the phone at all directly. So let's bring up our remote control app. It's called Switchboard. So Switchboard is a PySide app. It was developed by the Fortnite Shorts team. So if you saw the SIGGRAPH talk they did last summer, they showed an early version of it, and we've kept working on it since. This is the current state, kind of a preview of something that we hope to share and release as part of 426. But in the meantime, it's the best way to visually show OSC in action. It's a little bit more production-y compared to me just sort of typing in OSC messages at a command line. So we thought this would show a little bit better. Quick thing to note here is the IP address, right? So this is, again, the IP address that I got out of the iPhone app. Plugged it in here, and this is where the messages are going to be sent to by the app. For a future demo, we'll probably start to touch on other things here, like the multi-user aspects of Switchboard, but that's for another day. The main thing I want to show here is just changing the slate and take, right? So this is 49D take 2. This is the take after the take we just recorded earlier. I'm just going to go ahead and change it to something different, right? So 60 take 1. And you can see that it immediately updates the iPhone, and I haven't touched the iPhone at all. Next, I'll just go ahead and record, right? So here we go. This is a take that we initiated from Switchboard. It's recording me, and we're going to take a look at it right now. All right, so now we will pop back onto the phone, jump into the take browser here, and scroll down. We can see my new take 60, or slate 60, take 1. And here we go. This is a take that we initiated from Switchboard. It's recording me, and we're going to take a look at it right now. So I didn't think I could top my earlier take, but I somehow did. And in any case, this concludes the presentation. As a reminder, the app is available and free in the Apple App Store. With this app, we're really aiming to make facial capture easier and more accessible to creators going forward, and we're super excited to see what you do with it. Thank you so much for watching the presentation. I really appreciate it. We have a Q&A up next, and I'm looking forward to interacting with you directly online.